All right, so here we have Peter Parley's Universal History. And you can see that on the spine here. It says School Edition, so this would have been an old textbook for a school. You can see these this kind of decoration on the edge of the pages here, this coloring. I believe this is done by sort of dipping the edges in a material there, but I'm not sure. Alright, so let's open it up here. This is still really well intact, as you can see. Here's the frontispiece, which shows Peter Parley and his friends at Madrid. And I'm guessing right in the middle there is supposed to be Peter Parley. And here's the title page. It says Peter Parley's Universal History on the Basis of Geography. A new edition brought down to the present day. Illustrated by 20 maps and 125 engravings. And the publisher information at the bottom. You can see there's a bit of a stain on that title page. And then here on the back, there's a bit of it's labeled as an advertisement, but it's just kind of a description or introduction here. And it says, the attempt has been made in this work to give the pupil such an outline of universal history, to weave into a few pages a clear, vivid, and continuous tale of the great human family, one that may be both intelligible and entertaining to the young reader. The success attained by the previous editions during the last 30 years encourages the publishers to hope for a fair measure of success in this. And then down at the bottom, it shows that it was entered into Congress in 1874. All right, and here's the contents. You can see the first chapter is about traveling in a balloon and the curious things one would see. Then they have a section for Asia there, with a bunch of different chapters about aspects of Asia. They have a section for Africa, for Europe. And then they have a section for America. So it's organized geographically. And then Oceanica. And then they have important dates, origin of states, kingdoms, empires, etc., and celebrated characters at the very end. And here's one of the many engravings in here. You can see it says studying geography from a balloon. Let's see. So at the beginning here, if you should enter a balloon, rise into the air, and sail along over the country, how many interesting things would you see? At one moment, you would be passing over a city. At another, you would look down upon a valley or a river or a hill or a mountain. What a pleasant method this would be of studying what is called geography. For geography, you know, is a description of cities, rivers, valleys, hills, mountains, and other things that a traveler meets with. How much more delightful this would be than to look over maps, which only give you a sort of picture. And then he goes on and on about that. So this is just the very beginning chapter. If you were to extend your travels to Italy or Greece or Egypt or some parts of Asia, you would often meet with the ruins of temples, palaces, and cities which existed even 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. Some of these would excite your wonder on account of their beauty and some on account of their grandeur. And here's a world map, it looks like here. There's a number of different maps in here. I think at the beginning it said there was something like 20 maps. Here's another one. And then here's an engraving of Adam and Eve. So this book contains some Christian history as well in it. I think later on there's also a bit about Moses and everything. Oh yeah, right here. So there's a description of Moses and the bulrushes. So I'm sort of flipping through here, looking for other sections of interest, and you can also see the decoration on the edge of the pages again slightly there. So here's another one of the engravings. This one says, studying the map of Europe. It shows a teacher explaining the map there. Europe is considered the third quarter of the globe. It is the smallest in extent, being about 1/4 as large as Asia, 1/3 as large as Africa, and about 1/3 larger than the whole United States. Alright, there's another small engraving here. It looks like Oh yeah, in this section it shows the different Greek religious figures and Greco-Roman, I believe. So there's Jupiter, there's Apollo with the lyre and the halo, Mars with the spear and shield. There's Mercury with the caduceus there. There's Vulcan with his anvil. There's Neptune with the trident, and there's Pluto there, and there's Juno. There's Minerva. There's Ceres. There's Diana. There's Vesta. And then there's a section here for the Grecian philosophers. So it says, the Greek philosophers were men who pretended to be wiser than mankind in general. There were a great many of them who lived in various ages. I shall speak of some of the most remarkable in this and the following chapter. The philosopher Thales was born between 600 and 700 years before the Christian era. In his time there were 7 philosophers who were called the 7 wise men of Greece, and Thales was considered the wisest of them all. It says, one night, while this great philosopher was taking a walk, he looked upward to contemplate the stars. Being much interested in this occupation, he strayed out of his path and tumbled into a ditch. An old woman who lived in his family ran and helped him out, all covered with mud. For the future, Thales, said she, I advise you not to have your head among the stars while your feet are on the earth. Some people think that the old woman was the wisest philosopher of the two. And then it looks like it goes on to talk about Pythagoras and transmigration of souls there. So there's a lot of different little historical pieces of information in this book, and it's sort of meant to be entertaining as well. So here's a depiction of the assassination of Julius Caesar, or Caesar. There's some more information there about that, and I think this is another engraving here about the Crusades. Just sort of looking through for different areas. So here's a section about Germany. It says, in ancient days, Germany, as I have told you, was inhabited by numerous tribes of barbarians. Among these were the Goths, Visigoths, Vandals, Suevi, Cimbri, Teutons, Heruli, Alemanni, and many others. As there was no Peter Parley among them to write their history in early times, we know little or nothing of them till 200 or 300 years before Christ. So just being a little bit funny there in reference to himself. Here's another engraving. This is showing a scene in Russia. You can see the familiar buildings in the back there. And then this one is showing some Russian peasants, it looks like. Here we have the first Prince of Wales with an arch at the top there. So this is in this section for Europe still. There's a story of Scotland. Here we have a really nice engraving of an abbey from the Middle Ages. It says, some were called abbeys and some monasteries. Many of them were filled with monks and friars, and others with females called nuns. The splendid remains of many of these edifices are still to be found in England, France, Germany, and other parts of Europe. At first, the inhabitants of monasteries lived in a certain manner and devoted themselves to religious contemplation. But in after times, the abbeys and monasteries became the seats of voluptuousness. So just sort of saying that they degraded in their morals, I guess, there. All right, and here's studying the map of America. So we're moving into America here. This is a Tennyson's monument. Just flipping through, it's got some notable characters here. Here's the Quaker William Penn. You might recognize him from the Quaker Oats. We've got Abraham Lincoln as well. A great engraving there. It says, Abraham Lincoln was elected president in November 1860, but was not to take office till March of the following year. So remember, 1860, that would have been only 14 years before this edition of this book was published. This looks like it's showing a scene in the Andes, it says. There was supposed to be a kingdom called El Dorado, or the Gilded, which was thus described. The king was every day covered with powdered gold, so that he looked like a golden image. The palace of this glittering monarch was built of brilliant marble, as white as snow. The pillars of the palace were porphyry and alabaster. Its entrance was guarded by 2 lions, who were fastened to a tall column by chains of massive gold. After passing the lions, a fountain was seen, from which gushed a continual shower of liquid silver through 4 large pipes of gold. The interior of the palace was too splendid to be described. It contained an altar of solid silver, on which was an immense golden sun. Lamps were continually burning, and their dazzling radiance was reflected from innumerable objects of silver and gold. Such was the splendid fiction invented by somebody and believed in Europe. And it says numbers of adventurers went in search of El Dorado, and some pretended that they had really visited this golden kingdom, but it has long since been ascertained that no such kingdom ever existed. Talking about the myth of El Dorado. And then we're getting pretty close to the end here. It's Oceanica, and then it's showing some scenes from Australia with kangaroos there. And now we're sort of getting towards the auxiliary information at the end. And there we are. So that's the end of the book. Yeah, that's just an interesting old textbook from 1874 called Peter Parley's Universal History. If you like the video, leave us a comment or subscribe, and thanks for watching. Thank you.